Hare Krishna. Maharaj won't be with us tonight, so I'll be taking the wheel, and hopefully everyone will have lots to say. Prabhin Prabhu, I sent you a message. I don't know if you got it. I'm guessing you didn't. All right, I'll lead Kirtan. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnu Pad Panuman Sapadi Praja Pacharya Stotra Shri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nam Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Aim Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Mukund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navdeep Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mahi Ki Jai Jamana Mahi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to you assembled devotees. All glories to you assembled devotees. All glories to you assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Maharaj. Welcome everyone to Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. Today is April the 3rd, 2023, and Maharaj is in London now, and we're reading in the 3rd canto, 15th chapter, Description of the Kingdom of God. Tonight we're starting with text number 45. As always, we're eager to hear everyone's comments and questions, so please use the raise hand feature or simply unmute yourself, and you can speak when Maharaj asks for questions, or you can type your comments into the chat window. Just a reminder, please don't send any chat messages while Maharaj is reading something there. It makes it difficult to read. At the end of class, we'll post some helpful links that you can share with your friends so that they can attend as well. And Maharaj, we're glad that you were able to join us after all from London. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Samgatim Gayatam Yoga Margaya Janaspadam Bhavatam Nayanabhiramam Om Snam Vapur Dashayanam Dashayanam Om Snam Vapur Dashayanam Ananya Siddhar Odpadikaya Samagranan Yutamashtabhogai. This is the form of the Lord, which is meditated on by the followers of the yoga process, and it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary, but factual, as proved by great devotees, by great yogis. The Lord is full in 8 kinds of achievement, but for others, these achievements are not possible in full perfection. Purport: the success of the yoga process is very nicely described here. It is specifically mentioned that the form of the Lord as four-handed Narayan is the object of meditation for the followers of Yoga Marga. In the modern age, there are so many so-called yogis who do not target their meditation on the four-handed Narayan form. Some of them try to meditate on something impersonal or void. That is not approved by the great yogis who follow the standard method. The real Yoga Marga process is to control the senses, sit in a solitary and sanctified place, and meditate on the four-handed form of Narayan, decorated as described in this chapter, as he appeared before the 4 sages. The Narayan form is Krishna's expansion. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement, which is now spreading, is the real topmost process of yoga. Now, as I'm reading this, it seems to me that we've read this before. And
Yes, Maharaj.
That we're supposed to be further ahead.
Yeah, the paragraph starting 5,000 years ago.
Okay.
Which is about halfway down. Good.
5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna recommended yoga practice to Arjuna. But Arjuna frankly expressed his inability to follow the stringent rules and regulations of the yoga system. One should be very practical in every field of activities and should not waste his valuable time in practicing useless gymnastic feats in the name of yoga. Real yoga is to search out the four-handed supersoul within one's heart and see him perpetually in meditation. Such continued meditation is called samadhi, and the object of this meditation is the four-handed Narayan, with bodily decorations as described in this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. If, however, one wants to meditate upon something void or impersonal, it will take a very long time before he achieves success in yoga practice. We cannot concentrate our mind on something void or impersonal. Real yoga is to fix the mind on the form of the Lord, the four-handed Narayan who is sitting in everyone's heart. So again, this is a insistence by Srila Prabhupada that if you want to practice yoga for self-realization, then you have to follow the system and you have to take from the Shastras the actual goal of yoga. There's no point just putting up a sign, yoga, and then not following the system or not focusing on the actual target of the yoga system. Of course, as I mentioned last time, it seems rare that today people are practicing yoga with a genuine spiritual goal in mind or spiritual purpose in mind. It's just look good, feel fit. Doesn't even get to the point of some meditating on something impersonal or void. Yes, Tulsi Priya.
Maharaj, I was thinking about this at last class when there was some discussion. I think, it's a fact that there are a lot of people who take yoga for, getting a better body. And yet there are also people who take it as some kind of, I don't know if I want to call it a spiritual, they may call it spiritual, but they talk about connecting with myself or, finding peace within. And so it's sort of quasi-spiritual. And there's one young woman that I remember we had met her, we had organized a little preaching program ourselves, and she came. She's obviously a spiritual seeker. She was into Buddhism. She was in the recovery movement. She's a recovering addict and helping other people to recover from addiction. She was very much into Buddhism and yoga. And then somehow or other, I never saw her again. COVID hit and we lost track. And she came into touch with some other devotees who were doing some preaching in our area. And she started going to their center. And now she refers to herself as a Hare Krishna. But she's still very, very much attached to yoga practice. And she sees it as something that has been useful in keeping her from going back to addiction again. So how do you, Prabhupada is saying it's gymnastic exercises, and that's true to some degree, but there are other people who have this mindset about it, that there's something more to it, and they get something more from it than just the exercise, So how would we address that? Because it's not meditating on the form of Vishnu, but it's something more than just exercise.
Yeah, something more. In one sense, if you think that anything, just like devotees would take LSD and then they would turn toward Krishna. And in the beginning, they would think that LSD brought me closer to Krishna. So it's not really so that LSD brings one to Krishna. But somehow we were looking for Krishna. And in the process, you turn toward LSD and maybe away from something else. So this way or that way. But then we make the mistake of thinking that yes, LSD is but we don't do programs sort of encouraging people to take LSD so that gradually they can come to Krishna consciousness. And we understand there's some That's not how it works. And I'm not criticizing devotees who dovetail yoga in some way to bring people to Krishna consciousness. If that helps them reach people and bring them to Krishna, great. But we don't really accept that one comes to bhakti by LSD or by physical exercises. One comes to bhakti by grace of bhakti herself and by the association with devotees.
Thank you. There's a comment or a question in a chat from Saraswati Mataji.
Let's see. Well, I was asked once that if the soul resides in the heart, then if that heart needs to be transplanted with a donor heart, so then what happens in that scenario? Does that body now have two souls residing along with the super soul? Also, in organisms with no heart, where's the soul residing? Also, should devotees consider becoming an organ donor? As far as having the soul transferred from one body to another, sukshma tattva avigayam durastam chantike chatat. Both the Lord and the soul are described as sukshma, having the quality of being subtle. So when subtle means, as described in Shastras in one place, 1/10,000th the tip of a hair in magnitude. So with that kind of magnitude, it's hard for these surgeons to transfer or transplant the heart from one place to another. You can picture, if you will, taking a small net and somehow, if it were possible, trolling the net through the region of the heart. The holes in the net would be so large that, at least in comparison to the soul, that the soul would slip through the holes. You might, we experienced that you, even if you want to pick up water with a little net and carry it from one place to another, water doesn't transfer because the net is grosser. The water is finer than the net. The net is grosser than the water. So, yeah. So that we don't, in practical terms, we don't find that people are have heart transplants and then wake up after the post-op the consciousness of the person who gave the substitute heart. That's not our experience. Although we do find the matter of Daksha, whose head was transferred, that was sort of a special arrangement by the Lord. Let's see. And if there's no heart, Hrideshe in the Bhagavad Gita refers to the region of the heart. So there's some region where the soul is located, even if the organism has no visible heart. Should devotees consider becoming organ donors? I don't have a specific reference about that. but I've heard in a sort of general way or in such a way that I've never bothered to memorize the reference that one picks up karma by donating or having it donated. If you're considering such a thing, I don't have a specific reference, you might research it. Swarup Damodar Tulsi Priya says, Srila Prabhupada, Swarup Damodar? Srila Prabhupada, what about the, oh, I see. Swarup Damodar, Srila Prabhupada, what about the heart transplant? Spirit souls within the heart. But when in the medical science nowadays, the old heart can be replaced by a new one. So what happens with the spirit soul with the old heart? And Prabhupada says, but that does not mean the new one will increase their duration of life. That is our challenge. Swarup Damodar, but the personality has changed? Prabhupada, no. Why not? Why changed? Suppose if I sit from this chair to this chair, why am I changed? I can change my seat. It does not mean that I am changed. Okay, I have no comment there. And I'll just say, she says, I was given an analogy by a devotee to think of getting up from a sofa while the sofa is being switched. That's nice. Yeah. Okay, any further comments on these matters? Or any others so far? By meditation, one can understand that God is seated within one's heart. Even if one does not know it, God is seated within the heart of everyone. Not only is he seated in the heart of the human being, but he's also within the hearts of cats and dogs. Bhagavad Gita certifies this fact by the declaration of the Lord, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hriday Serjantishtati. Ishvara, the supreme controller of the world, seated in the heart of everyone. Not only is he in everyone's heart, but he's also present within the atom. No place is vacant or devoid of the presence of the Lord. That is the statement of Ishopanishad. God is present everywhere, and his right of proprietorship applies to everything. The feature of the Lord, by which he is present everywhere, is called Paramatma. Atma means the individual soul, and Paramatma means the individual super soul. Both Atma and Paramatma are individual persons. The difference between Atma and Paramatma is that the Atma, or the soul, is present only in a particular body, whereas the Paramatma is present everywhere. In this connection, the example of the sun is very nice. An individual person may be situated in one place, but the sun, even though a similar individual entity, is present on the head of every individual person. In Bhagavad Gita, this is explained. Therefore, even though the qualities of all entities, including the Lord, are equal, super soul is different from the individual soul by qualitative power and expansion. Lord, or the super soul, can expand himself into millions of different forms, whereas the individual soul cannot do so. Just give me a minute, I'll be right back, okay? So we have a distinction between the individual soul and the super soul. Ishra Sarvabhutam. Lord is in the heart of everyone. Shek Treshu. Tanvidhi. Kshetreshu Chapi Tanvidhi. Sarvik Kshetreshu Bharat. One should know that the individual soul is within the heart, but the super soul is in everyone's heart. Kshetreshu Chapi Tanvidhi Sarvik Kshetreshu. So there's this distinction between the two. Now let's see what's in this in the chat. Doug says a common scientific argument against the soul, and specifically transmigration of the soul, is that of monozygotic twins, one sperm, one egg, so one soul, that would then need to be divided between two people. I'm sure if you have a comment for this. I've just heard this argument many times before. Well, our response would be that this is not your standard reproductive pattern. Generally, twins are the exception. So the soul is placed into the body of the child, and the child is born. And then sometimes there are twins. In that case, for the Lord or the agents of the Lord to come up with two souls and place them in both bodies is not difficult. Not difficult. Let me just think of something. I was just thinking of some instance where the mother was pregnant, and perhaps they'd gone out and bought a they call in here in England a pram, baby carriage. By the time before the pregnancy was brought to term, it turned out that there were 4 children. So they had to buy a carriage with 4 seats. So that's not the usual case. Usually 1 would do it. But then when there's an exceptional case, you get a stroller with 4. So if this is possible on the ordinary physical platform, doesn't seem like it's difficult for the higher authorities to place souls in multiple bodies as required. That is to say, multiple souls, to provide multiple souls with multiple bodies. We see this in ordinary affairs, when there's, because I just got off a plane some hours ago. So sometimes 2 passengers have the same, they're both booked to J8 or something like that, the same seat. So the staff sort of sit down, okay, you go here, you go here, you go here, you go there. Normally everybody just sits in the seat whose number they have. Sometimes things get a little more complicated. But still the seating is completed and the jet takes off. Okay. If there's anything more complicated, we can go into it, but I think it's sort of covers territory. So Priya says, if the Lord is present in every item, and everything that exists is within the Lord, then everything is within every atom. Question mark. This is beyond any concept of monism or voidism. Nothingness is easy to conceive of, if impossible in fact, but that everything is within everything is within Krishna is some next level theology. But that's Krishna. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Krishna is everything, and Krishna is within the heart. So then everything is within the heart because Vasudeva is there. And as you point out, it's not easy to conceive. But that's Krishna. It can be Andanta Stapanamana Chayantaras. He's outside of everything and he's within everything. Who can understand Krishna? Then how can anyone prove how many souls are in every given atom, every given sperm? I don't know of any scientific experiment by which one can prove how many souls are where. We take it on Vedic authority, which saves us from having to come up with an experiment to prove these things. Proof is Vedic proof. That's our method. Not experimental proof, not empiric proof. Even from an ordinary point of view, scientists themselves will say that this is beyond the realm of science. That this is beyond the realm of science. Science deals with empiric matters that can be proven or disproven. And all right, taking that to be so, that just means not that there's nothing existing beyond science, but that science can't really say much about it, except that it's beyond the jurisdiction of science. Saraswati says, we know there are cases of co-joined twins that share same organs in one body, including one heart, that have different personalities. So is that one heart with two souls? Yeah, these are all, again, exceptional arrangements. We see that there's two sets of consciousness. Even one's slim, one twin is in one mood and the other is in another mood. So it's not that there's only one person there. We see there are two different persons. But there can be two different persons with one physical heart. There can be two different souls. I've read that the soul enters the fertilized egg after fertilization, so that should answer the twin issue. No, it doesn't really, because when we talk about monozygotic twins, we're saying that the soul enters, and then then the body divides into two. So according to our usual description of the things, this is inconsistent because for one soul there should be one body, and or for one body there should be one soul. So you had one body, now that one body has become two souls. So what has happened is the soul divided into two, or is there one soul and existing in two bodies? So there is a twin issue, but our answer to the twin issue is that Krishna can arrange these things. It's not really very difficult. Rabin says, Shri Bhagavanavacha, Karmana Daiva Netrena, Shantur Deho Papataye, Striya Pravishta Udaram, Vamso Reta Kanashreya. Personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. Yes, that's our standard picture. So again, what we have here is a kind of deviation from the standard picture. We have the usual way things are done by Krishna's arrangement. And then sometimes we have an unusual circumstance in which Krishna makes a different arrangement. So that doesn't really throw us off, doesn't make us question everything again and say, well, how is it possible? This disproves our understanding. It can't be so. It's just a different circumstance which is dealt with exceptionally. Okay. The super soul, being seated in everyone's heart, can witness everyone's activities, past, present, and future. In the Upanishads, the super soul is described as being seated with the individual soul as friend and witness. As a friend, the Lord is always anxious to get back his friend, the individual soul, and bring him back home, back to Godhead. As a witness, he is the bestower of all benedictions, and he endows each individual with the result of his actions. Super soul gives the individual soul all facilities to achieve whatever he desires to enjoy in this material world. Suffering is a reaction to the living entity's propensity to try to lord it over the material world. But the Lord instructs his friend, the individual soul, who is also his son, to give up all other engagements and simply surrender unto him for perpetual bliss and an eternal life full of knowledge. This is the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, most authorized and widely read book on all varieties of yoga. Thus, the last word of Bhagavad Gita is the last word in the perfection of yoga. So, Vasuparna Sayajasaka Sakaya, the Lord is present with the soul as the Upadrashthanamantacha, the permitter and overseer, and also as the friend. So as the overseer and permitter, he provides or allows nature to provide what it is that the living entity may aspire for. But as the friend, he advises the living entity, don't go after this rubbish. Please come to me. But that's up to the living being. He may respond, yes, let me turn toward you. Or he may reject the friendship extended by the Lord. Prabhupada refers here to the Bhagavad Gita, but the Bhagavad Gita is the most well-known and widely read book on yoga. And if people would take Bhagavad Gita as it is, they'd have a far different idea from that which is most often propagated as yoga. But of course, we find generally these days that people studying yoga are not usually studying Bhagavad Gita at all. They're studying their exercises, they're watching videos about how to stretch this way and how to stretch that way. But reading any kind of serious reading of Bhagavad Gita is outside the picture. And especially Bhagavad Gita as it is, because Bhagavad Gita as it is would tell them, you're wasting your time with these gymnastic exercises and not making advancement toward the real goal of life. I don't know, because I'm not in that scene, whether to get certification as a yoga teacher, you have to know anything about Bhagavad Gita. But certainly you don't have to know the true goal of Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, you'd be, in one sense, decertified as a yoga teacher. You'd be coming from the place of saying, well, what are you doing with this nonsense yoga? It's a waste of your time. You should be turning toward Krishna. And this yoga system, if you could practice it, would be for a different age, and it would be practiced far differently from anything you can hope to do in your Kali Yuga city. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that a person who is always absorbed in Krishna consciousness is the topmost yogi. What is Krishna consciousness? As the individual soul is present by consciousness throughout his entire body, so the super soul or Paramatma is present throughout the whole creation by super consciousness. This super conscious energy is imitated by the individual soul who has limited consciousness. It's rather audacious that the living entity presumes to be the super soul, presumes to be supreme, presumes to be in control. I remember in the 1960s in New York, there was some sort of meditation in which one would go deep within and one would meditate. I am moving the moon and the planets. I am present as the sun, and so on. One would meditate on one's supremacy, but it doesn't work like that. I can meditate, I am the President of the United States. The Army is under my control. The Navy moves according to my will. But that doesn't make it a fact. Now, I can understand what is going on within my limited body, but I cannot feel what is going on in another's body. I am present throughout my body by my consciousness. My consciousness is not present in another's body. The super soul, or Paramatma, however, being present everywhere and within everyone, is also conscious of everyone's existence. As I was reading, I was thinking, well, maybe there's some parapsychological example where a person is conscious of another person's thoughts or feelings or experience. But even if that were so, at best, the parapsychological subject, the extraordinary person, the person with extraordinary abilities, might be conscious of one or two other fields of experience, but certainly not every field of experience. You wouldn't be aware of what's happening to every living entity. So the conclusion is the same. The theory that the soul and the supersoul are one is not acceptable because it's not confirmed by let's see, because it's not confirmed by authoritative Vedic literature. The individual soul's consciousness cannot act in superconsciousness. This superconsciousness can be achieved, however, by dovetailing individual consciousness with the consciousness of the Supreme. This dovetailing process is called surrender, or Krishna consciousness. From the Bhagavad Gita, we learn very clearly that Arjuna in the beginning did not want to fight with his brothers and relatives. But after understanding Bhagavad Gita, he dovetailed his consciousness with the superconsciousness of Krishna. He was then in Krishna consciousness. So oneness doesn't mean one becomes Krishna, but one dovetails one's intentions with the intentions of Krishna, or one serves Krishna. The person in full Krishna consciousness acts by the dictation of Krishna. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, dictation is received through the transparent medium of the spiritual master. When one is sufficiently trained and acts in submissive faith and love for Krishna, under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, the dovetailing process becomes more firm and accurate. This stage of devotional service by the devotee in Krishna consciousness is the most perfect stage of the yoga system. At this stage, Krishna, or the Supersoul, dictates from within, while from without the devotee is helped by the spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of Krishna. So in the beginning stage, we don't get any message that we can perceive from Krishna. The spiritual master guides us. And as we make progress, then dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayati te. Then along with the instructions of the spiritual master, the direct prompting of the Lord is there, guiding one to act in a particular way. From within, the Lord helps the devotee as Chaitya, for he is situated within the heart of everyone. Understanding that God is seated within everyone's heart is not, however, sufficient. One has to be acquainted with God from both within and without. And one must take dictation from within and without to act in Krishna consciousness. This is the highest perfectional stage of the human form of life and the topmost perfection of all yoga. Theoretical knowledge that God is within one's heart is not everything. One has to realize the presence of Krishna. Amara Priya asks, how does the spiritual master help when he has died? He helps by his instructions, especially. The instructions of the spiritual master are there to guide us. Prabhupada, in his Bhagavatam, dedication, says that he's present forever by his instructions. He lives forever by his instructions. For a perfect yogi, there are 8 kinds of super achievements. One can become lighter than air. One can become smaller than the atom. One can become bigger than a mountain. One can achieve whatever he desires, one can control like the Lord, and so on. But when one rises to the perfectional stage of receiving dictation from the Lord, that is greater than any stage of material achievements above mentioned. Breathing exercise in the yoga system, which is generally practiced, is just the beginning. Meditation on the supersoul is just another step forward. But to obtain direct contact with the supersoul and take dictation from him is the highest perfectional stage. Breathing exercises of meditation practice were very difficult even 5,000 years ago. Otherwise, Arjuna would not have rejected the proposal of Krishna that he adopt this system. This age of Kali is called the fallen age. In this age, people in general are short-living and very slow to understand self-realization or spiritual life. They're mostly unfortunate, and therefore, if someone is a little bit interested in self-realization, he's likely to be misguided by so many frauds. The only way to realize the perfect stage of yoga is to follow the principles of Bhagavad Gita as practiced by Lord Chaitanya. This is the simplest and highest perfection of yoga practice. Lord Chaitanya demonstrated this Krishna consciousness yoga system in a practical manner, simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, as prescribed in the Vedanta, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and many other Puranas. Okay, let's see. There's some chat box comments. Oh, I see. Saraswati, advanced devotees are directly receiving instructions and guidance from Krishna. So it is confusing how then these devotees are thinking themselves fallen and foolish, as instructed by Lord Chaitanya.